and the 5 people on board.
Flippy can cook everything.
Sunk to the ocean floor.
This fire season.
Musk believes brain implants could cure a range of conditions, including obesity, autism, depression, and schizophrenia.
Huh.
It was only last
Thought
year
this was supposed to
when he
be
said
the
that he was
fun
so
little
confident
aesthetic-y,
in his device's
cyberpunk-y
safety
future, not the
that he would be willing to implant them
downright
into
depressing
cells.
one. So far this year and last year have felt like just this infinitely bad fan fiction, where the writer, in an effort to save it, just throws every single thing they can think of into the plot, which actually makes fan fiction a lot worse than it possibly could have ever been, or really had to be. And I am nothing but a lowly main character suffering through every single arc. So today I figured that we could talk about the arcs in this little dystopian fanfiction that we call life right now, and just get a good old laugh out of it. Because if I don't laugh, I fear that I might scream. You know that scene in Blade Runner 2049 where Kay is staring at that Joy advertisement? This is the exact same thing, but text chats, and not even Ana de Armas. So, like, what's the fucking point? Amouranth, a YouTuber and streamer who is known for
do it. Fuck yeah.
basically everything that you can think of at this point, decided to get her own little AI chatbot where fans can basically message her and just virtually talk to a chatbot that's supposed to be like her. And one of the perks of said chatbot is that it is going to be able to virtually date the person using it. Yeah, with AI Amouranth, fans will receive instant voice responses to any burning questions they may have, a press release for the bot reads. Whether it's a fleeting curiosity or a profound desire, Amouranth's AI counterpart will be right there to provide assistance. Well, this is a super healthy thing to do that is just completely good and absolutely has no drawbacks to it. What could possibly— Every day we're getting closer and closer to actually seeing the weirdo subplot from Perfect Blue play out in real life, and truly, I hate how this movie is getting more and more relevant as it ages. We've really went from content creators basically begging people to view them as people and not just a commodity, to Amouranth literally saying, "Hey you, dipshit with the unwashed ass. Are you possibly horny and trying to date me? Well, good luck you fucking loser, because now you can with my simple app." Because what's the point of having a real woman locked up in your basement when you simply have Amouranth AI readily available on your phone? Now, if you'll excuse me 1 second, for completely unrelated purposes, I have a cat girl that needs to be euthanized. Be right back. Sorry, kitten. Daddy has a new favorite girl. Where were we? Arguably, the worst part about all this is when I was doing my research regarding this whole situation, I learned that Amouranth is not the first person to actually do this. You know, the whole AI girlfriend shtick. And the even worser part is that that girl's AI decided to go rogue and decided to be horny as fuck when not programmed to do that. When speaking to Insider about this apparent change in tone, Karen Marjorie said that while Karen AI is supposed to be flirty and fun, the sexual scenarios were not part of the plan. Now she and her team are looking to fix the kinks, pun not intended, if anyone asks, in the chatbot and stay one step ahead of the AI so that it doesn't besmirch her reputation. So basically, from this nightmare, we know that AI is unpredictable. We know that these conversations can go into directions that they weren't meant to go in. And of course we all know that Amouranth's fanbase is 99.9% horny men and 0.1% liars, both who may or may not shower or know what boundaries are. So, Perfect Blue Part 2 coming in 2023, boys. Can't wait to see it. This AI is definitely going to convince a user to kill someone. I am calling it now. I am placing my bet. Amouranth herself is extremely excited about the project, saying in a press release, "I thrive on taking risks and pushing boundaries. Above all, I prioritize being there for my incredible audience. AI Amouranth is designed to satisfy the need of every fan, ensuring an unforgettable and all-encompassing experience." Is it meeting the needs of every fan or giving your simps that have unwashed asses another reason to not go outside this week? Like, let's be real for a second, Amouranth. You know exactly who's going to be using this. And it's simps with unwashed asses, otherwise known as Twitch staff. Now hear me out, okay? I know that this is drastic. I know that I have not always seen eye to eye with this group of people. However, I think desperate times call for desperate measures, and I think it's time that we join forces with the alpha males in order to put an end to AI girlfriends. Like I said, desperate times call for desperate measures. It benefits you lovely alphas by telling people to not be simps. That AI chat pussy is not real pussy, and mayhaps instead actually commit some alleged sex trafficking in Europe in order to become a real alpha male. Oh, and it benefits the rest of us because we're not seen as simple flesh puppets bouncing on a string and doing whatever you want and desire. Here's the very legal contract that I have for you, Mr. Tate and Company. Please feel free to sign this at your nearest convenience. Tech millionaire Brian Johnson spends $2 million a year to look younger, including swapping blood with his teen son. Now, my first thought reading this is that, oh, there's no source linked, so therefore, it must be clickbait. I mean, judging from the literal jump scare that his grandpa from Texas Chainsaw Massacre groping the man, we can assume that it's for clicks because no one in their right mind would ever do this insane youth-obsessed tech mogul now swapping blood with his teenage son. Dr. Acula will see you now. It's real. It's all horribly real. As Bloomberg reports, 45-year-old tech entrepreneur Brian Johnson recently took to a Dallas area health clinic with his 17-year-old son Talmaj and his 70-year-old dad Richard to engage in an intergenerational blood swap, with the elders receiving the plasma of their offspring like some sort of 21st century vampiric ritual. Well, duh, what's the point in having children and grandchildren if you can't even harvest and drain them of their life essence? First, we have Gwyneth Paltrow selling a rock saying that if you shove it up your coochie, it'll fix your period. Now we have literal millionaires getting IVs of their kids' blood like it's the fountain of youth. Rich people try to be normal for once challenge failed once again. At this point, it's probably impossible. Now you may be thinking, okay, blood swapping with your kids and grandkids, that's a little fucking weird. But hey, it couldn't get any worse than that, right? My sweet little fool, my darling little idiot. You should never say that it can't get worse because it absolutely did. It wasn't the first time that Middle Johnson had been to a clinic to get young blood transfusions, though during the prior visits he received the blood from an anonymous donor whose profile he'd painstakingly selected based on body mass index, blood type, diet, and overall health record. These are real words and a real thing that is occurring in real life. We need to guillotine the rich. Not because they're rich, not because of the whole taxes thing, but because they keep doing stupid shit like this. And now you may be thinking, okay, that's definitely weird, but it can't possibly get any worse. And I need you to shut the fuck up because yes, it can. You need to stop asking that question. Earlier this year, Bloomberg reported on the tech founder's quest to return his brain, heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, tendons, teeth, skin, hair, bladder, penis, and rectum to the state they were collectively in when he was 18. The ongoing endeavor cost him about $2 million per year as he employs a team of 30 doctors and specialists to advise him on how to return to his peak late-teen physique. You literally cannot make this shit up. This man is spending $2 million a year to try to restore his asshole to what it was when he was 18. You cannot look at this man and tell me that this is not the face of a modern-day vampire. This man looks like he's one blood transfusion away from starring in a Daybreakers remake. He's giving buff Nosferatu, if Nosferatu had a fear of his asshole aging. I do kind of feel for the guy because a fear of getting older and fearing looking older is a very big thing and you could easily get sucked into all that. Dealing with knowing that the only thing certain in our lives is that we are going to die and if we're lucky we'll age and get older is pretty hard but something that everyone has to eventually come to terms with. So I can sympathize with that urge to cling to any straws of youth and health possible. But again, family blood transfusions with the youths kinda takes me out of feeling any bit bad for this dude. And his self-admitted aging dick and asshole. Oculus founder claims to make VR headset that will actually kill you if you die in a game. I don't even know what to say to this shit anymore, dude. Describing the headset in his blog, Lucky details how he made a Sword Art Online style, you die in a game, you die in real life headset. Now see, that's where you guys made your first mistake. Why would you trust anybody who likes Sword Art Online with technology? And better yet, why would you trust anybody who likes Sword Art Online? That was our biggest mistake as a society, and now everything makes sense. We are simply reaping the consequences of our terrible choices and actions. So the article then breaks down the point of Sword Art Online, so we can officially say that Forbes did a breakdown of Sword Art Online. My god, I thought I would never say that. And then it details how this version of a VR headset is, and I shit you not, laced with charges that will explode, destroying the brain of the user if they trigger an appropriate game over screen. Can you imagine just like Markiplier playing the new Five Nights at Freddy's VR game and the dude just dies on camera? I think that the best part about this article is truly that this man just constantly thinks of how he can make Sword Art Online real, because he tweeted about this concept literally in 2021, a full year before creating this nightmare, for context. The concept of video games with physical consequences as severe as death are a sci-fi staple, but seen as beyond the pale in real life. Given the popularity of motorsports, extreme athletics, etc., why? Listen, I do not want to be a snitch. I do not want to be a Karen. However, if people suddenly start dying and it looks like something was strapped to their head and that's what blew apart their fucking skull, I'm just saying, maybe he shouldn't be ruled off the suspect list. But hey, if the literal saw trap of a headset that Mr. Lucky decides to strap onto you does not kill you, you always have this last arc as an option. Well, we've finally reached peak dystopian in this fanfiction now, haven't we? For those of you who don't know what MAID is Medical Assistance in Dying, and is a program in Canada enacted in 2016 that allowed those suffering with terminal illness to have a choice in getting medical assistance with ending their lives, which in all honesty is something I can personally get behind and support. If you're dying from a terminal illness and you basically know that you're gonna die in 6 months, 5 months, however long it is, and you are just in pain, I really think it should be available to you to have the option of going out on your own terms. What I don't support, however, is what the program has seemingly evolved into, which, to put it bluntly, is just the Canadian government saying, oh, why should we bother with, providing good health care and good support for our citizens when you guys could just fucking kill yourselves? That wasn't a good Canadian accent, but I think you get the point. Because with the proposed expansion to MAID, which would include mental illness, that is essentially what they're doing. Homeless, hopeless man to seek medically assisted death. I really think this would be the best decision for me. I've researched it. This is an informed decision, says a real man seeking MAID, not for terminal illness, but due to lack of hope. Ontario man applying for medically assisted death as alternative to being homeless. See, this is how I get you guys. I give you the funny ha-has, and then I just smack you over the head with the fucking reality check that real life is actually genuinely depressing. And honestly, it only gets worse and the articles get even more depressing, so to spare us a little bit, I'm going to be reading snippets of the articles to still get the point across while just letting you decide if you want to continue reading them or not. Links are in the description as always per usual. The first article talks about Tyler Dunlop's life as well as everything that has led him to this decision, but the end of the article is just a lot, to be honest. If he had safe, stable housing, if he saw any hope of escaping his situation and helping others, he says he would give life another chance, but he does not have that hope for himself. If I can help people, well, that's good enough reason to stay, but I feel useless. That's why I want to do this. I'm hurting people. I'm hurting myself. I'm hurting society, he said. This isn't self-pity and self-loathing. I'm seriously using up too much emergency services. Failure is consistent, and I'm trying to get out of this hamster wheel, and I can't do it. Which, really quickly, I just want to say that if you feel like you are using up emergency services and that you're using up too much and it's affecting other people and you're not helping others, I just want to let you know that you're not. You do not deserve to feel that way. Your government should basically be stepping in and making sure that everybody is able to access these emergency services and that nobody feels this way. Those services should be improved upon over you feeling like you shouldn't use them anymore. And the second article is also a sad situation, because it's regarding Amir Farsad, a man suffering from agony due to a previous back injury that leaves him crying and without sleep, plus being medicated for depression and anxiety, who is on social assistance and can't find anywhere to live that he can afford, and the current place he lives at is for sale, so he's literally facing homelessness due to not being able to afford a place to live given his circumstances. And the worst part is that he wouldn't be considering this if he wasn't facing literal homelessness due to housing being insane. When asked if he would consider assisted dying if he had stable housing, Farsad said he wouldn't even be close to it yet. It would be on my radar because my physical condition is only going to get worse. At that point, I would be probably availing myself the option, but that would be presumably years down the road. Those are two very different situations. And yet, the Canadian government, instead of taking these as bright red flags for that they need to do more to help their citizens to ensure that shit like this isn't gonna happen, they just kind of are letting it slide. Because apparently expanding MAID to encompass mental health so they can get a government-approved death instead of helping their citizens, not be homeless is a really good alternative. Because again, while these two situations specifically discuss homelessness, the only reason this is happening is due to MAID's expansion into mental illness. Which, when I looked into it, I just found that they had a very vague set of standards and regulations and all that honestly are more negative than positive. According to the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, any person who requests MAID must be assessed by 2 healthcare practitioners to determine if they meet all the criteria, including if their illness is grievous and irremediable. Any person who requests MAID must be assessed by 2 healthcare practitioners to determine if they meet all the criteria, including if their illness is grievous and irremediable, In situations where a person is not at the end of life, one of the healthcare practitioners must be a specialist in the condition that is causing intolerable suffering. Currently, there are no agreed upon standards for psychiatrists or other healthcare practitioners to use to determine if a person's mental illness is grievous and irremediable for the purpose of MAID. A government-appointed expert panel recently made recommendations for determining if a person has a grievous and irremediable mental illness. They recommended that healthcare practitioners look at the number and types of treatment attempts, outcomes of these treatment attempts, and the severity and duration of the person's illness. It is important to note that these are just recommendations at this point. It is not clear whether the government will use these recommendations and/or if further instructions or standards for determining grievous and irremediable mental illnesses will be developed before MAID for mental illness as a sole medical condition becomes legal, which only leads me to more questions. What is considered a treatment attempt? Like, is my one visit with a therapist that didn't work out going to count, or is my first prescription that I used for a month and never used again something that counts? And how do you determine the severity and duration of a person's illness, especially when they may not have gotten help when they needed to initially, and what is considered severe enough? I'm gonna level with you guys for a moment. I was put on lithium my last year at college because, to be blunt, I have this lovely little thing where something small can happen to me and my immediate response is to find the nearest building to jump off of. Like, I got a D on a math test and my brain doesn't go to talk to the professor, it goes to, I think I could probably jump off the lark, like, face first, and it'll do it. But now that I'm out of college, I think that, but with every little inconvenience. Would that be severe enough? Because also, while I only just started treatment when I was in college for it, I wasn't able to further it because I was unable to get a blood test to prove that lithium wasn't just like, I also could barely make an appointment with my therapist or psychiatrist because it was just that busy during COVID. This is stuff I've also arguably dealt with since, 5th or 6th grade at the earliest. So is that long and severe enough? Or what I'm getting at is with the lack of standards for MAID with mental illness, and arguably with even how vague and not fully fleshed out the recommendations are that, again, may or may not even be implemented, it feels that adding mental illness to MAID is just a cop-out for the government and the healthcare system to say, basically, we're not going to put up with this anymore. And to me, at least, again, somebody with perpetual just do it brain, it gives me less hope when trying to seek treatment. Because I've already had bad experiences with therapists. I bet this will make it even worse. Now, people who work in the field of mental health have already started to weigh in, and most notably the conclusion to Alexander Simpson's research titled Medical Assistance in Dying and Mental Health, a Legal, Ethical, and Clinical Analysis, as well as the Center for Addiction and Mental Health's 2017 policy advice, they just really summarize my view on this. Those of us who work in mental health are only too aware of our limitations. There are people for whom it seems all we can do is inadequate to help them find a way to live. We need to be humble in the face of that limitation and keep striving to improve our care and practice. To introduce MAID as an option in this great struggle will only undermine our ability to help people who are suffering greatly with mental illness and burden clinicians with profoundly difficult ethical conflicts between hope, life, and assisted suicide. People may choose to take their own lives. That is understood and respected. But acting as a partner in helping people recover, as well as acting as an agent in a patient's death, is an impossible burden that is not ethically justifiable or legally necessary. MAID should be confined to terminal illnesses and situations where a person is physically incapable of enacting his or her own wish to commit suicide, and not to serious mental illness alone. In summary, MAID is a complex moral and ethical issue. Determining whether to amend MAID legislation so that people with mental illness as their only medical condition do not have to meet the criteria of irreversible decline and reasonable foreseeability of a natural death adds further emotion and opinion to this debate. While there are various factors that decision makers should consider, including the ones we have outlined in this paper, good public policy should be evidence-informed. And in this case, the lack of evidence that mental illness is an irremediable medical condition in individual cases should ultimately guide decision makers to conclude that an amendment to MAID legislation for people with mental illness as their sole underlying medical condition should not be made at this time. Now, the reason that I am talking about this and making a big deal about this, despite not being a maple leaf up north, is due to the ever fun fact that states in the United States that have legalized medical assistance in dying, specifically Colorado, are starting to go down this route as well. In 2022, Denver-based eating disorder doctor Jennifer Gaudiani talked about the deaths of 3 patients with anorexia, one after taking legal doses prescribed by another doctor with her as the consulting physician, another dying of malnutrition the day she planned on taking the medication prescribed to her, and the third co-wrote the paper that Jennifer Gaudiani published because she felt so strongly about this right. I don't even know where to begin with this, honestly. Dr. Jennifer Gaudiani is coming from a place that anorexia can be lethal, which, do not get me wrong, it can be, and it's unique because it causes physical problems, and went on record to say that depression per se will not kill you. Anorexia nervosa will. She also defined the criteria for terminal anorexia, the way that this lady is differentiating which patients are okay to kill themselves with her approval and which ones cannot, as being 30 or older, prior persistent engagement in high-quality multidisciplinary eating disorder care, and consistent, clear expression by the individual who possesses decision-making capacity, indicating an understanding that further treatment is futile, a choice to stop prolonging life, and an acceptance that death will be the natural outcome of the individual's anorexia nervosa. Thankfully, there are people in her field that haven't jumped to the "your case is special, so I'm gonna let you kill yourselves" option and actually decided to criticize her. In the article First Do No Harm, the proposed definition of terminal anorexia is fraught with danger for vulnerable individuals. It says that central to medical assistance in dying, also known as physician-assisted suicide, is a terminal diagnosis. While receiving nutrition is immensely distressing to an individual with an eating disorder, it is critical to note that malnutrition is not a terminal illness, and nearly all of the resulting medical complications can be reversed with nourishment. The authors themselves note that there are no explicit physiological markers or measurables: weight, degree of weight loss, presence or degree of organ failure, vital signs, which delineates someone with terminal anorexia, and that the human body can be exceptionally resistant, and that the human body can be exceptionally resilient, even with terminal malnutrition. In the setting of no identified physiological markers or measurables or data, how can one predict whether or not an individual with anorexia nervosa has a less than 6-month prognosis, and without the subjective data, is terminal the appropriate descriptor? And in the article, Terminal Anorexia is Dangerous Justification for Aid in Dying, Gaudiani and colleagues' assertion that prior persistent engagement in high-quality multidisciplinary eating disorder care as a defining criterion for terminal anorexia nervosa may sound reasonable when applied to the cases in the article. This statement is a non sequitur. The 2 patients in Gaudiani's report were offered MAID without ever receiving adequate trials of specialty disorder treatment. One patient underwent 2 brief stays in intensive treatment before leaving against medical advice, while another was hospitalized for medical stabilization, but thereafter doctor reneged on enrolling in a residential program. These fleeting attempts at treatment can hardly be considered prior persistent engagement in high-quality, multidisciplinary eating disorder care. These patients that were offered medical assistance in death from this doctor didn't even meet the criteria that the doctor set out for this herself. I'm in awe, honestly. Like, I do not understand how you are taken seriously as a professional after a stunt like that. This is not a scenario with red flags. This is a scenario with a bright red neon sign flashing, "Just stop." Because I tell you what, this is not going to stop with anorexia. We've seen that happen in Canada, and that horrifies me. And I'm gonna be honest. Based on Canada's safeguards, which consist of a 90-day assessment period, second assessment by a practitioner who is a specialist in the field that is causing the unbearable suffering, being informed on other means like support services, and agreeing those means were discussed and considered, and being given the opportunity to withdraw their request, and of course seeing how the US docs are already trying to do this without all that and bypassing their own self-determined safeguards and guidelines, this is not going to end well. It seems like these people are just being pushed off to the side because they're considered beyond help by these professionals. Whether that's through actual mental illness or using mental illness as a reason to avoid homelessness in Canada's case. Because despite all those safeguards, I can tell you this right now as someone who seems like they could mayhaps be a candidate in Canada, at least given the vague recommendations. Probably the US too, once some doc decides to do this with us bipolar individuals for funsies. If you caught me in a really bad depressive episode and gave me this option, I might just take you up on that offer. And like I said, since the United States is heading in this same direction apparently, I'm genuinely horrified that this is going to be made available to people. Because it genuinely seems like this is just going to be used as a one-size-fits-all, you're beyond help, so we're just going to let you do this kind of solution, considering the fact that, again, the doctor who established the term for terminal anorexia couldn't even follow that criteria herself. I get therapy being hard, I get mental health and dealing with it daily and learning how to cope in the best ways possible being hard. Truly, I do. But a professional should still do more for you to assist you in getting better, learning new ways to cope, helping you determine if you need more than what they can possibly provide and helping you get that help, and help you get medications in order if needed before even thinking of a government-approved death recommendation. I'd like to believe that actual mental health professionals with an ounce of tact would do that, but it seems like that may slowly and surely be less of a norm if these expansions occur in medical assistance in dying. Well, that is, certainly something. And that certain something brings us to the work-in-progress bit of the dystopian fanfiction that we call life. How fun, right? Is it gonna get any better? Mayhaps a little worse than it already is. Probably the latter, in all honesty. But hey, at least we can laugh about the funny stuff in this dystopian fanfic together while dreading what horrors lie ahead. Hope you all enjoyed this little trip down the worst dystopian shit I've seen in like the last 2 years, because truly, if I had to know this information, you do too. Oh yeah, and sorry for getting really depressing there at the end. I really lured you in with the funny ha-has and just smacked you over the head with a newspaper. If the newspaper was just crippling depression. But until the next video, which, if all goes well, it should be on the first anime I ever watched, which was pretty fucking bad if we're being honest. Go outside, touch some grass, but try to stay away from vampiric millionaires, and I will see you guys later. Bye!